Welcome to Propane Fitness Podcast. I am sat here with Dr. Jon Xue Zhang. I feel like I butchered that already. Jon is a man of many talents. I discovered him a few months ago, basically, from some videos from a guy called Master Wong, who is a hilarious YouTube martial arts guy that went quite viral recently. Jon is a martial artist and martial arts teacher. He's a musician, stuntman, done lots of media stuff, and there is actually a beautiful portrait video that you can check out. We'll put it in the show notes to get a kind of clear overview of what he does, but it's doing some form things out in a field, punching some stone, and basically, for such a big dude, he moves so swiftly. He is quite terrifying, and I'm quite glad that we're over on a Skype so that he's far enough away. He's also been on Take Me Out, so this is the second guest that we've had on Take Me Out. Welcome, Jon.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, it doesn't matter how many things I do. Take Me Out is always a thing people remember me for. It's no one cares about the other stuff I've done. But no, thank you so much for having me on. I love what you're doing. I've checked out your website and, loving your videos and love the content. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I feel like Take Me Out is one of those things that just haunts you for the rest of your life. It will chase you around. Yeah. So, Jon, to start with, would you rather fight 20 duck-sized horses or a horse-sized duck?
A horse-sized duck.
Okay, can you talk us through why?
Well, it's just you're only fighting one thing, and if I'm fighting multiple opponents, for instance, your awareness has to be everywhere. You're taking attacks from all directions. You're taking hits from everywhere. If I'm just fighting the one, I might stand a chance of getting away, or maybe getting on the back of him and, riding off somewhere.
Okay, fine. You get it in a chokehold. So even taking multiple attacks from little tiny horses, you'd prefer to just focus on one thing?
I think so, yeah. I think, it seems less dangerous somehow.
Ducks, I'd imagine a duck that size could be pretty vicious, but yeah, fair enough. You're the expert. So, second thing, would you rather take a punch from Mike Tyson or take a kick from Bruce Lee?
I think I'd rather take a kick from Bruce Lee.
Okay.
And it's because, how many people can honestly say they've been kicked by Bruce Lee? And I'd also say, Bruce Lee, the man, the legend, I think it'd be quite an honor to be kicked by him. It might hurt a hell of a lot. I'm sure it would, though. I think it would be worth it. I think if Mike Tyson hit me, maybe I did something to anger him.
Okay, so fine. So the criteria there really is less about how much would each one hurt. It's more what gives me more credibility points afterwards to say I was kicked by Bruce Lee.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'd wake up in hospital after both of them. I'd be like, hey, guys, guess what?
Instant selfie opportunity, definitely.
Absolutely.
Jon, what's your PhD in?
So I actually specialized in counseling, and I'm doing a second PhD at the moment in psychology. So at the moment, I'm focusing on conflict management. So I'm looking to do some stuff with that in terms of, because I know a lot of martial arts schools, they teach a lot of self-defense and everything, but I feel that conflict management and conflict resolution is something that needs to be introduced. So I'm doing some research at the moment for my current PhD for that.
Okay, cool. This is part of the reason I wanted to talk to you, really, because there's so many facets to what you do, and you seem to bring them together in a way that is quite cohesive, despite on the surface them being very, very separate approaches. So I suppose before we start, can you give us some background on you as a whole? So the martial arts, how that started, what disciplines that you've done, and then also how you kind of tie it all together with what you do in your day job.
Sure. So basically, I started training when I was 5 under my father, and we trained in a lot of different styles like kung fu, different styles of kung fu, and so I started training under a guy who taught the SAS, who I learned a lot of different styles from him, and I trained with a lot of different people as well. Though I think I think I did. It was like I started off with karate in addition to the kung fu. Aikido, Jiu-Jitsu, Hapkido, Arnis, which is Filipino, and Silat, which is Indonesian, which so like a broad range of martial arts. And my father was always said to me, doesn't matter where the style comes from or what nationality the style is from, learn it for its benefits. And, it might seem confusing to begin with, but actually, in the end, it all comes together. And, I think for self-defense, you never stick to one style anyway. So my background is I've been training for about 26 years now, and I've been teaching for about 14 years. And yeah, it's something I enjoy doing very much. So I've taught army, police, security, as well as actors, which I enjoy doing.
As in actors just for their own purposes, or for show?
So mostly for show, really, just because martial arts can be broken down into three main categories. So you've got performance, fighting, and health. So generally, for actors, it would just be for performances. And so it's a bit of choreography, some stunt work, just so that you maintain distance so that you don't hurt each other. That's the most important thing, health and safety. Okay. But yeah. And
I've seen you do some quite artistic stuff as well. My background is gymnastics, but I've done some of the sort of tricking things as well, which for people listening is, I guess the most famous guy is Juji Mufu, who combines bodybuilding and tricking. Basically, it's all of the flashy performance-looking aesthetic stuff from various martial arts, mostly Taekwondo, I think,
yes.
Mixed into a kind of flow routine with some gymnastics, some elements of breakdancing and that kind of thing. But apart from that, I've done a little bit of judo, a little bit of kickboxing and Muay Thai, but nothing that serious. So have you ever had to use your what you've learned in a street fight, or in a kind of a scenario where you'd rather not?
Yes. So I live in Oxford now, but I grew up in Telford, Wolverhampton, Birmingham, the West Midlands. And, I think, gang crime is quite high there, and as well as knife crime. And, if you get into one fight, for instance, even if you win, they've always got friends. They keep coming back at you. And so you can't, so you're always on edge as such, and I think I've been in a few situations where I've had to do something. And of course, you reflect on it and you think, could I have avoided it? And for the most part, yeah, I could have avoided a lot of those. But, when you're younger, you don't. You know what I mean? You see it for what it is and you think, oh, you don't think about the consequences and you just get stuck in.
What would you have done differently to avoid things off now?
I think, I probably could have reasoned my way out. And if I couldn't have reasoned my way out, maybe I could have run. I think there is absolutely no shame in running. So I think nowadays, I think I do a bit more cardio because it's more important for you. It's good for your, all-around health anyway. But I think, when I was younger, there was no such thing as just running away because you've got ego. You have to stay. You have to fight. You've got to do. And I think that was just stupid. There were times where I definitely thought, or where I definitely think now, I totally could have just run away and, avoided it completely.
So was that the kind of thing driving you at the time, ego or pride that would say, or honor, I suppose, saying like, no, I need to stand my ground?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because when you're younger, you think, I'm a martial artist. I train to fight. I do this and that. And when you're younger, you don't think about martial arts as being something more than a way of fighting. So it's like that's something that came to me a little bit later on. I think when you watch all these kung fu movies, I think deep down I knew, hey, martial arts is way deeper than just fighting. But being young, I also knew I could get away with getting into a few scraps, which I totally avoid now, just because it's not the hill you want to die on. You know what I mean? It's never, ever, ever worth it.
Sure.
I mean, I've done door work, I've done event security and everything. And even in being a bouncer, for the most part, I've been able to de-escalate situations. And it's just tone of voice, And I think if you're calm and reasonable, generally, for the most part, shall we say, people do respond to that, and they don't want to escalate it as such. Of course, there are always exceptions to that. If someone's taking drugs, for instance, if they're on coke, for instance, they want to fight. Then you have to take a slightly different approach. But I think for the most part, when I was doing a lot of door work, I didn't really have to do all that much. I had my fair share, but I didn't have to do all that much, and I was able to de-escalate most situations without ever laying a finger on anyone else. So I think, if I had known things like this, how to do this when I was a bit younger, well, probably would have been a bit easier.
That is the true skill, I suppose, to be able to de-escalate without having to resort to that. Interesting. Absolutely. You say it's kind of substance specific as well. I've definitely heard bouncers refer to working on the doors of clubs as dealing with children, and that you have to be really overly kind of clear and simple with your directions with people who are drunk, because it just doesn't quite get through. And so, it's an interesting one. Do you think that your experience as a martial artist gives you so I suppose this is where if it's put in the wrong hands or not, but does it give you a sense of confidence, or a sense of a sizing up or estimating someone who might be a threat? And would that make you more or less likely to engage with them? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for myself personally, if I'm a trained martial artist, if I'm approached with a situation where I think I may have to use my skills, or I'm just sizing up a situation, my last resort is always something physical. So that it doesn't matter how good I am or how accomplished I am in martial arts, that I think, fighting or some kind of physical intervention is the last thing I ever want to do. So I don't ever hold that over anyone. I'm not above anyone. I have training, but it doesn't make me better than anyone else. And I think as soon as you have that approach where, I walk into a room and I size up everyone, knowing full well that I could take everyone, I think that's a terrible approach to have. And because you then carry a certain overconfidence about you. It might be true, it might not be. And it's like, I walk into a room, all I see is people, you know what I mean? And it's when I was a bit younger, I'd see potential threats. I'd see this, and I'm maybe being a bit paranoid, but I look at people, I think, if I'm going to fight him, how would I, maybe I take his legs out this way. And you know what? It's not a good way to be. It's like I definitely feel younger for it, because I'm not as worked up over, can I take this guy? Can I take that guy? It's very much, no, I'm not above anyone. I'm just a guy who trains, and I enjoy it, and I enjoy passing it on to other people. And for the most part, I wanted to focus my martial arts nowadays, I'd rather be a better teacher than a better fighter, because it's better to help people than it is to hurt people. And it's like, so that if, in terms of a martial arts perspective, I'm always looking at how I can help people, not hurt them, not do anything to cause them harm.
Well, I suppose this is attached to your inherent personality traits and a lot of other kind of social structures. I remember hearing Joe Rogan talk about how the rise of MMA, without the concomitant spiritual or moral principles that come along with learning a martial art, ends up with a risk of attracting sort of antisocial personality type people that just want to go and kick people's heads in, and it's an outlet for them to do that in a way that is semi-sanctioned, and yes, that we're creating a bit of a monster by the growth of its popularity.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more. Unfortunately, martial arts, for good and bad, martial arts is now available to everyone. So it used to be a necessity for a time of war. Back in ancient China, ancient Asia, where you had to know martial arts for self-defense, otherwise bandits would, but nowadays it's a choice. You can learn martial arts because it's a hobby, and unfortunately it does mean that you get these assholes who can be trained. They might be terrible people, but they might be excellent fighters. That's the terrible thing. But I will make the distinction. Yeah, absolutely. I will make the distinction that a good fighter is not always a good martial artist. And a good martial artist is not necessarily the best fighter either. So I'd say, unfortunately, there is a lot of, and Joe Rogan is absolutely right. There are a lot of people out there who are trained, and do they embody the spirit of martial arts? No. Are they trained, and can they fight proficiently? Yes. And without that, those morals and ethics to help guide them, it makes them very dangerous people on the street. It makes them, because if you start learning martial arts, well, the first thing is, I wonder if I could take this guy. It's a very natural thing to do. But that's why I'm these days, in terms of who I teach, I'm actually quite selective. I'll these days I teach a class on Saturdays, and it's actually closed door. So basically, it's I need to know who you are first before I teach you, because I want to know who you are, what you're about. And, for the most part, I just get, people who have families, who want to learn how to protect their families and protect themselves. And I also get, just people who've got an interest in something creative, something different. And, as soon as I get someone I say to someone, hey, so why is it you want to train? And they'll be like, well, I just want to fight. I've got this raw energy, man, and I just really, really want to get myself out there. And I'm like, okay, well, I think there are other classes that are actually better suited for you, and I'll send them to, I'll refer them somewhere else.
Really? So you don't actually take them on?
No. So I'm very selective like that. But in terms of, like, say, basic self-defense, I'm happy to teach anyone, and I never charge for it, just because, it's basic self-defense, which is keeping your eyes about you, self-awareness, your surroundings, learning how to breathe, compose yourself under pressure. These are all things that's self-defense, learning how to talk as well. And, once you've got those things down, you've got the two things. So you've got composure under pressure, keeping yourself calm, as well as keeping your eyes on your surroundings, awareness. Once you've got those two things, that's some very good self-defense there. And you need those things before you can learn physical skills. That's because I think if I could show you 1,000 techniques, and if you don't know how to compose yourself under pressure, the techniques will never work, And so in terms of, say, basic self-defense, I'll teach anyone. If it's like martial arts, and they've got, they want to learn martial arts for a certain reason, I need to assess what that reason is before I take them on. So
I suppose this is where you kind of bridge the what something is on the face of it quite a destructive process into something that then helps people grow in multiple modes. I'd love to dive into the mindset stuff as well. Just I do have a question. So you said about this kind of instinctive sizing people up, and what were the situations that you were getting in Wolverhampton and the East Midlands and so on that were getting into street fights? Because as far as like the instant profiling a guy, I would not want to start a fight with a massive Chinese guy. Like, I think that's second only to an old Chinese man. And like, just because you just think, well, statistically, they are likely to be hard as hell. So what was going on? Why were people getting into fights with you?
Well, it's like you might get into a random argument with someone. So it's like I may have had a friend. If I was out with a friend, for instance, and he got into a bit of argument with someone, and push came to shove, and I thought, no, hang on a minute, So you try and get into the middle. You play hero maybe a little, and you then get stuck in the middle. And then what happens is you inherit that argument, you inherit that fight, because now you've become a part of it. Anyway, that punch that was aimed for your friend comes towards you instead, and you react as you would. And then, you defend yourself. You might take them down, okay, and then you manage to get your friend away. Man, you feel like the man, for however long that lasts for. And then, you might wander those streets again. You know what I mean? And then the person you took out, he sees you, and he's like, okay, it's him, and he's got friends. Now I know this Asian guy. He actually hangs out around about here. Okay. Right. You know what I mean? And it becomes a bit more premeditated. And what happens then is, as soon as they find out where you go to college, for instance, as soon as they find out, no one ever found out where I lived, and I want to keep it that way. But it's like as soon as they find out where you go to college or where you work, then you know what? You've got a fight whenever you don't want one, and it's awful because you're always looking over your shoulder, and that's the worst place to be because it makes you paranoid. And the thing is, even if you fight off one person, you fight off the second person and the third person, they keep coming back. And there's always more and more and more. And it gets worse. It does escalate. It gets to the point where, I mean, I would have been what? Between the ages of 14 and 18 when all of this was happening. And it's like, teachers can't help you. You know what I mean? It's like, and you're afraid to go to the police and everything, and you're afraid, and I was more afraid of what my father might say, but it's like, you win one fight, okay, it doesn't mean you've won the entire battle because they will have friends, because as soon as you beat someone, under those kinds of circumstances that aren't controlled, under uncontrolled environments, like if it's a ring, after whoever wins fine.
And there's a ref, there's rules, like you both know that the fight is actually happening. It's not just like you walking along and someone comes up and sucker punches you, which has happened to me. So yeah, and you just think, well, what can I do?
It's awful. I mean, and it's like the problem is, they might come in numbers as well, multiple opponents, and you know what? It's like, if you're faced off with 10 people and say 6 of them have knives, you're like, oh, okay, you know what? It just ain't worth it. And, I think when you've got knives, for instance, you got to cut your losses, It's like, I've never been stabbed, been slashed. It's not nice. Even if it's shallow, it doesn't stop bleeding. And because, the heart is pumping and everything, the adrenaline, even a shallow cut doesn't stop bleeding. And then, you know what? You go cold from that. And it's like, I've seen it with broken bottles before. I can close my eyes and still see broken bottles coming towards my face. It's not nice. And it's like, it doesn't matter if you're big or whatever, it's because safety in numbers for them, you know what I mean? I mean, I've been more or less the same build since I was 17, so I've always been big, and
how much do you weigh for the listeners?
So I'm 108 kilos. So that's what I'm not. Is that 230 something pounds? But it's yeah. But no, I'm what, 5'9" on a good day.
So I suppose then people see that as a bit of a challenge in some ways.
Yes.
Like all of my friends who are taller than average tend to get more bother just from people that think like, oh, I'll have a go at this guy because it's almost like it's a status thing. But yeah, just the fact.
Absolutely.
I mean, just because you're between 14 and 18, it doesn't make it any less dark. I mean, that's quite major stuff. If someone's like victimizing you, following you around, like attacking you in numbers with a knife, like that's pretty serious stuff. That's gone beyond street fight. That's like guerrilla warfare.
Absolutely. And the thing is with knives, I mean, the toughest fight that the toughest fight you'll ever have is the one that you never see coming, the one that you never prepared for. So it's like, if someone comes from behind, for instance, where you didn't see and it just catches you, it's like if God forbid you get stabbed in the back or something, you're probably going to lose the fight, if there's more of them. So it's like, and the problem is nowadays, it's very easy to get hold of them. It's like some of the knives I've seen are horrible, and different varieties of them. And, some of them are cheap and some of them are, but I won't get into the gruesome parts of knives, but it's I'd say generally nowadays, if you can keep your eyes about you, that is the most important thing. So my advice to anyone would be, if you drive or cycle, the awareness that you have when you're doing those things is what you should have when you're walking. So eyes on where you're going, eyes on who's around you, and not to have your headphones in and not to be on your phone as well. Those are so important things,
Oh, yeah, and the phone thing, like you see people crossing the road on their phone all the time and you're just thinking like, without even any malicious intent, they're still putting themselves in danger. So, if someone's actively out to get you, then it's a whole nother story. So I guess street fight wise, we've got keep your wits about you, maintain the level of vigilance that you would be when driving or cycling, drop the ego, and run if possible. Do you have any other advice if, let's say, those options aren't possible, or you're cornered, or whatever it is? What can someone do in that situation?
When all else fails, okay, then you realize what you are capable of. You as a person are capable of, and sometimes you might have to do things that you probably wouldn't do because you might be a bit too squeamish. It's like pulling piercings off, biting. It's like you do things that you wouldn't normally think that you would do. And it's like objects, what's around you. It's like if there's a bin next to you, for instance, you know what? If you start tipping that bin and starting rubbing rubbish all over you, who's going to want to hit you? Who's going to want to come close to you? You know what I mean? Or you start throwing that rubbish.
I did not expect you to say that.
You see what I mean? Now, stuff like that happens, but it's all circumstantial. You see what is available to you.
Speaking of which, I don't know if you've seen that video of this guy that goes around starting fights on people in the hood, and then like when they get ready to start on him, he just drops his pants. Have you seen this? And reliably, everyone was like, "Whoa!" And like, I don't know how much I would trust in that method, though. I think because if you've got your pants are literally down, then it also means that you can't walk or run very easily either. But I see what you mean. So there's an unexpected element to it.
Absolutely. I mean, I've heard of other more unorthodox ones where you do drop your pants and make a similar kind of gesture. But it's like that's not my style. I think there are definitely ways you can and I'd always say, if you are trained as a martial artist or some self-defense and someone picks a fight with you, to be honest, for the most part, it's opportunity. You're getting attacked because it's opportunity. They want something from you. They're probably not expecting you to fight back. So you generally have the element of surprise. And if they knew you could defend yourself, they would not have attacked you in the first place, for the most part. Okay, not every situation, but for the most part, if they knew you could defend yourself, they would not have attacked you in the first place.
I see. So they're not necessarily looking for a fight. They're just looking for something from you, whether it's your phone or whatever else. I imagine it's probably most commonly phone.
Right.
Yeah.
Now,
the last two situations I've had, I suppose, one of them was someone trying to take my phone, and the other one was it was actually a Nazi. He sucker punched me just from the side. With his two mates. Obviously by the time I kind of got up and realised what was happening, he was walking away. But to be honest, I just thought to myself, like, this is a guy who is going around punching people. Like, he's clearly not a very happy person. I think karmically, I can just leave it to that to take care of itself. And it turned out, found out who he was through. He used to work with a friend of mine. He got fired from his job because he did something racist in his work uniform. And he did community service for punching a 10-year-old black boy. So, it makes you think, well, there's no need to even try and get revenge or anything because these things take care of themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, there is retaliation where you respond immediately or you do something else that's, I think you're right. I think definitely that person shouldn't be out there, you know what I mean? And that person should be flagged by some kind of authority. Now, I do think there are some people who do have mental health issues and they do cause harm. I mean, I had to talk someone down who I remember he was punching the windows and I remember going out. And as soon as I went out to talk to him, the lads he was arguing with, they all backed off and pulled their phones out. I thought, oh, here we go. You know what? It's like
to be honest, man, that's balls to go and approach a guy who's punching windows. Because if he's not afraid to punch through glass, then
yeah. Well, the way I see it was, if you have the capability, then you have the responsibility. To do something. Maybe it's not to intervene and fight. Maybe it's to call the authorities, but you have to do something. Nowadays, kids just pull out their phones and record it. And I thought, okay, I'm sure this is going to get on YouTube. So I've not seen the video, thank goodness. But basically, I talked to this guy, and I could tell from his skin tone, he's wearing shorts, and he had, I could see holes in his legs where he'd been injecting. And I could smell alcohol and something else. I can't tell you what it was exactly, but he was not a well man. And he was threatening to stab me and everything. And I said, well, and because he was convinced that someone had stolen his bike. and he wanted to stab me, and nothing he said ever made sense. And I said to him, well, if you stab me, how am I going to help you find your bike? You know what I mean? So, like, let's ignore everyone here. Come talk to me. So it took about 10 minutes, and I talked him down eventually. 10 minutes felt like forever, but, and police came and took him away, and I didn't think anything of it. And unfortunately, a week later, he actually stabbed a man to death.
Really? So you found out it was the same guy?
Same guy. I was sick to my stomach, when I found out it was the same guy, because sometimes, even if and the thing is, the guy I think he was schizophrenic, and he had some kind of something else as well. And I think he had a drug problem also, which I could see from his legs. But it's like, I would say that, unfortunately, sometimes when you manage to avoid a situation, sometimes you just pass on the curse to someone else, and it's, so there is always that's in the back of my mind sometimes, and it's.
I definitely see that, but there's no guarantee that if he engaged with you, that he wouldn't have stabbed the guy next week, and so.
That's true.
Yeah,
it's true,
and it's a shame. Yeah, it's a systemic failure of the justice system, I guess, that it is slow to act. Maybe for better or for worse. Yeah. I mean, similar thing happened to my flatmate. He was hit with a lead pipe on his way back from the gym. The police found 5 witnesses, 3 of which were hospitalized. There was a blood match on the pipe, and they identified them through the lineup. But then the police were like, when they interviewed the guys, they were like, oh, no comment. The police were like, oh, well, you've scuppered the justice system, nothing we can do. And you're thinking, well, what more proof do you need? But, so they got off scot-free because they said no comment, which I find really odd. But I guess this is it. So there are you've got a few videos on this as well. So if you can signpost the listeners to them because you've got a few kind of Street Fight 101, I suppose, or like Altercation 101. We'll stick them in the show notes. The one that comes to mind is the one where you're like grabbing onto the chin and pushing people over. I don't know if you know what I'm referring to.
So if you knock someone's head back, where the head goes, the body follows. If you knock the head back, the whole body's going to go back. But if you don't manage to take them off balance, you push the head back. It actually pushes it brings their hips forwards. Do you see what I mean? So if I do this, your hips are going to come forwards, and then you could actually deliver a knee to the groin. It's a fairly simple one. It's of course the same routines don't always work again twice, but physiologically, if you're going to knock someone's head back, it's it does tend to give you the groin to knee, for instance.
Seeing that seemed like the most high yield thing that you could do, just because I've seen some of these in the past where they're like, oh, what you need to do is like grab their little finger and then you twist underneath and then you like get the point in their left nostril and then you squeeze, and you're thinking, well, there's no way. Not only am I going to be able to remember this, but to act it out in a street fight that what is the average 7 seconds that they last for, so just totally impractical stuff. And I suppose that's where it comes the difference between martial arts and self-defense, as you said.
I mean, there is they do overlap, though. I'd say almost any technique that you could ever think of will work if the conditions are right for it. Okay, so it's like if I managed to do a back somersault kick, for instance, if I ever landed it, it would be because the conditions were right, and I would walk away a hero. You know what I mean? I think the video would go viral pretty quickly, and there's but you know what? For the most part, it's not going to work. It's like
then you look like more of a willy if you fail it, especially when it's a 10% success rate or whatever.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's like, not to say that I've not tried stupid things. It's like, I had this one spinning sidekick, which was beautiful. And I used to catch people in sparring with it. And I thought, this is great. I remember getting myself into a bit of a situation where I thought, okay, I'm going to line this guy. This was on the street. Line this guy up, and I'm pretty warm. I'm pretty, I was like, okay, and I remember I'm going to catch him with it. I lined him up perfectly, did a spinning sidekick, missed. And you know what? Even though it's like I managed to get the better of the situation, okay, even though I managed to, I managed to deal with the situation, but I beat myself up over the fact I missed that kick. And I was like, oh,
Well, it's a high risk, high reward situation, I think, doing
yeah.
that.
If it would have landed, I probably would have tried it everywhere, but,
So
I
maybe
was
for the
just,
best then.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Do you think some arts are more suited to defense than others? I don't know if you've seen. I know they love doing this stuff on YouTube, and I really don't know how accurate it is because I'm sure it's down to the individual fighter rather than the art. But where you have like Tai Chi versus kickboxing, and you have some guy who's like a Tai Chi master, and then he just gets wrecked because this guy just rushes him. Do you think that's a false dichotomy that they're trying to pitch things against each other that aren't matched for that?
It really depends on skill level and the practitioner. If I get a Tai Chi guy, oh no, let's say I get a Aikido guy, for instance, okay, or even a Tai Chi guy, it doesn't matter. I mean, and he's been doing it for a month, okay. Then I get a boxer who's been training for a month as well. I'm going to bet on the boxer, okay, who learns to punch on the first day. For that whole month, all he's going to be doing is punching. Now, maybe we take it a few years down the line, okay. I'd say, well, even then, I'll probably still give it to the boxer. Maybe we go 10, 20 years down the line or something, okay. You know what? Because martial arts is a lifestyle, it's a journey, and fighting is a part of it, but it's not everything. And I think, you've got a martial arts guy, like an Aikido guy or a Tai Chi guy who will be able to, in theory, move and flow better and actually put up a bit of a fight and everything. But, ultimately, I think it is down to the practitioner. It absolutely is down to practitioner. I saw that MMA guy versus the Tai Chi guy who gets overwhelmed, who gets taken down. And then, when you watch that Tai Chi guy's other fights that he's done since, he actually recognized that his stand-up game wasn't that great, so he actually took on some more training. When you watch his other fights, actually, I feel for the guy because he puts himself out there, and he wants to be a good martial artist. He wants to, but it's like, I think you might be a very good martial artist, but you might not be the best fighter, and it's like I said earlier, you could be a very good fighter, but not a very good martial artist, and the guy who took the Tai Chi guy out, the MMA guy, you've seen him, the guy can fight. He's got videos of him fighting, and he's a legit MMA guy. And whereas I don't think the Tai Chi guy had any confirmed fights before. I don't know that for sure, but
okay. So in that case, it's about specificity as well. So I guess the same with the boxer. You said that if they're just practicing punching all day, then your bet is on them to be the person who punches. And I guess if it's whether the art is fit for purpose, but then I guess the extension of that is why is it that in UFC, for example, that you tend to see the same clusters of disciplines that people do? Is that just convention, or do you think that there's a gap there?
Partially, I do think there's a gap there because nowadays mixed martial arts is boxing, Thai boxing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, wrestling, judo. You know what? I think they could mix it up a bit more. You could have, that could be your base style, but there's so much out there. It's like Anderson Silva was learning some. He's learning some Wing Chun as well. You get some of these. It's like I think there's a lot of stuff out there that. Whilst people might disregard an entire style, there are still elements from those styles that are useful. So that's the whole philosophy. You find things that work for you, and not every technique is going to work for you because the conditions aren't right for that. It's like, I'm not going to be doing anything that, say, any of the Shaolin forms, which because my body type isn't particularly conducive towards that. You know what I mean? It's whereas something like wrestling I might be a bit better at, so it's really seeing where your strengths are, but not just working to your strengths, but also working towards your weaknesses. I'd also say you should train according to how you feel as well, okay? Because I train when I don't want to. I wake up at 5:30 every morning. I train when I don't want to. Because if you can train when you don't want to, you'll be able to fight when you have to. Because a fight happens when you least expect it, when it's a time of their choosing, not of yours. I'd hope. So it's I'd also say you've got a Muay Thai fighter who's very, very good and everything. What happens when he's tired? He might still be able to do some clinch defenses and everything, but if you're tired, you know what? Maybe that's when you can start incorporating another style to complement that that frame of being when you are tired. You know what I mean?
I see. So in terms of playing to your weaknesses, and I think I did a bit of judo when I was younger, and the whole time it was very effective for what it was and for the remit that judo is, which is extremely close range, grappling and groundwork. But it felt so deficient as a complete thing, and I realise it's not designed as anything beyond what it promises. But it's funny because your paradigm shifts to everything that you do is like, oh well, I'll stop the guy from grabbing my belt, or like stop him from getting into this position or whatever. But you don't think he could kick me in the face because kicking in the face isn't a thing in judo. And so in your mind, the safest position to be in is curled up in a ball, because you think, oh well, no one can get me now. But then you forget, you actually neglect that in a real situation, being curled up in a ball is probably the worst thing you can do. So and I know you said you've done a mixture of different martial arts, so you've done quite a wide range of them, from like Silat and some of the other Eastern ones as well. So I guess you are someone who does multiple arts, and I guess the counter argument is that you then become a jack of all trades, and that picking one art, especially if it's one that has had multiple influences and fed into something that's culminated in a system of its own, that would be a better way to go.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile the two, and then how do you? Because surely even the stances, even some of the techniques, are at odds with each other within what you've learned.
Absolutely. I've never specialized, and I never wanted to, because I'm not a master. I never call myself a master. I never call myself a sensei or a shifu, just because I'm a student. I will always, always, always be a student, and I'll pass on whatever I know. In terms of when you're learning different things, I'm an enthusiast. I love the martial arts. If that looks cool, hey, I want to learn it. It's like, if I can incorporate that into what I do, in how I move, great. I want to learn that. And it's I'd say being a jack of all trades is not necessarily a bad thing, because essentially that's what MMA is. You're learning bits and pieces from here and there. That's it's like you'll be better at some things than you will be with others. It's like for instance, I'm very partial to weapons. I like weapons. Mm-hmm. Whereas I'd say I think my weapon skills are probably better than my empty hand. Maybe, I don't know. It's but then I'd also say, it's just an interest. It's like a musician never wants to run out of run out of songs to play ever. You know what I mean? So you don't want to keep playing the same song. It's like so when I teach my students, I don't want them to be like me. I want them to be like them. So I'll teach a few movements and everything. How you then rejig it into a way that works for you, I'll happily let you work that out. You know what I mean?
Okay. So that makes sense. I'm actually, although I'm playing devil's advocate here, I'm very much of your mindset. Just because I'm greedy, I want to be able to just experience the full spectrum of different sports, different physical activities, different disciplines, and all of that stuff. And I know that I'm taking the cost of that is not achieving mastery of a specific skill, because it's too fun to play with all of it. And but I guess the problem, particularly with martial arts, is that because of the overlap, so there is always some variation of a punch. And so if you were to only train in a specific discipline, you are greasing the neural groove to execute that punch with incredible precision. Whereas if you then do a punch in a slightly different art, you're kind of muddying the waters in that you're not greasing that exact same neural pathway. Mm-hmm. And I've definitely found this with doing gymnastics combined with some other kind of overlap art, where you end up just kind of muddying your technique up a little bit. How do you avoid getting into that trap? You have to be very conscious in what you're doing. It's like anything that I incorporate into my own set of movements, for instance, my own preferences, is a conscious decision. Now, it's I've been doing this for 26 years. There are things that
I'll do a certain way which people might not agree with, but other people from different disciplines will. It's just a way of, it's like essentially I'm, if I'm learning a new language, you ask me how I am. I don't keep saying I'm fine. How are you? I re-articulate. I find different ways to answer your question. I could have 1,000 answers to the same question. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm trying to do with my martial arts, for instance, where I just keep it varied, keep it diverse, and it's just something that's. Variety is the spice of life. Now, I'd say, in terms of martial arts, you'll never learn it all. That's if I've learned anything, you'll never learn it all. And there's always going to be someone better than you. And and if there is, learn from them. And it's like people see that as competition. Me, I see that as an opportunity. Hey, man, you've got these. You can do this, you can do that. Please teach me. You know what I mean? It's like, and then it becomes an exchange. It doesn't become competitive. You learn from each other. And I think that is a very conducive way of being a martial artist. You learn from each other, and I'd say, that's how you maintain the peace, shall we say. And, people might criticize you in a certain way. People have said, yeah, but, maybe you could do it like this. Maybe you could do it like that. Actually, yeah, I absolutely could. Now, if I knew I could do it like that, and I keep doing that, I've actually learned nothing. If I do it this way, and you make mistakes. In street fights, for instance, you make lots of mistakes, okay? It's like if you do the same thing again and again and again, you actually learn nothing. If you try something else, I'm not saying that you should. I'm not saying that you should ever fight. If you do something else, what happens is, you're like, okay, yeah, my plan in this street fight is to do this. It didn't work out. What did I learn? Okay, now it's thinking on the spot as well, improvising, And because if you're a jack of all trades, you have more to draw on. You don't have just one system of fighting to draw upon. Now, I'd say it very much is the practitioner and how you use it and how you apply those understandings to a situation. So it really is up to you.
Right. So it needs a base level of competence, really, from what you've said there, that you've done it for so long that you get the fundamentals, and then you can start to play with the variables and expand your mind, take the tapas of various martial arts and play with them. Something that I'm really interested in is the different. So the range of things that you mentioned there. Aikido, Silat. What were some of the other ones you said?
Jiu-Jitsu, Hapkido.
Okay, so they are a mixture of, from what I understand, of like tight body versus loose body martial arts. Particularly if you look at, I guess the two extreme examples would be something like Shotokan karate, which is very kind of rigid, and compared to like capoeira or something where you're just fully loose and there's no rigid form.
Yes.
When they're so different, even the fundamental way that you stand and hold yourself is so different. How do you mix the two?
I think it's very much it's time. So basically, if it's like finding a bridge between two islands. If they don't meet, then that's fine. Maybe that's not the one you do straight away. But it's but you take the principles from capoeira where you are loose. Maybe you start stretching a bit more. You know what I mean? And then as soon as you start stretching a bit more, okay, and if you're not moving in these linear lines as you would in, say, karate, for instance, it's like, actually, I'm very good at moving in these lines. What if I start moving in circles? So you start challenging your own paradigm of what you understand to be martial arts. You then change that and you become, okay, let's see how this capoeira guy moves. Okay. And if it feels uncomfortable and it feels, this is not in my comfort zone, then you're learning. Nothing tends to grow in the comfort zone. It's a bit of a cliche, but I'd say you've got to make those connections. It's like, if you go to a capoeira class, for instance, my goodness, you've got to be, or if you go to a taekwondo class, for instance, you got to be hella fit. I see some of these guys, and I think I did one taekwondo class, and my calves were on fire. Within, and I thought, okay, I'm not used to this. Maybe I should do more of it. Or maybe I should do something similar just to acclimatize myself to that should I ever find myself in a situation that needs those types of moves, chances are you'll never do it. But it's for me, it's an interest, and I love it all. I love all martial arts. It's like, and I can talk about it forever. And but it's like, I do get a lot of people messaging and saying, "Hey, would you fight this person? Would you fight?" Yeah, I've got it. It doesn't interest me. Fighting doesn't interest me in the slightest. Well, not anymore. Anyway,
it's the process. It's the learning of it. Yeah, I totally get that. And I suppose the other branch of that, which you're very into, and so am I, is the meditation, the internal cultivation of that as well. Can you talk to us a little bit about your practice?
Yes. So I go to the woods every morning to meditate. Sometimes I do it before my gym workout. Sometimes I do it afterwards. But it sets me up for the rest of the day. But I find that meditation is the most important when you feel that you don't have time for it. Because you're like, oh, I'm so busy, man. I've just got no time to stop. Oh, I got to do this. I got to do that. You see what I mean? It's so easy for us to do that. Meditation, you can do it within a few seconds, within a few minutes, and you can reap the benefits from it. It's just, it's essentially maintaining breathing, And what people don't realize is meditation doesn't need to be sat still. Now, a lot of people do it when they're doing things that they love the most. For some people, it's going to the gym, Some people, it's playing football, and they're so in the moment, they're breathing, because they're out of breath, so you have to breathe. And they're so in the moment and they're enjoying it and everything. You know what? They are meditating and they don't even know it. It's and I think it's meditation in motion. That's what it is, and everyone has a form of meditation. It might not be martial arts, it might be something else, and I think it's just finding what works for you.
I think that's such an important point, because so many people I know are like, oh no, meditation's not for me. I could never do that. And it's like, well, if you just see it as sitting in half lotus with your hands in your lap, then yeah, some people will find that boring, and it's such a shame that to be put off the whole prospect because that style doesn't work for you. And those same people probably are meditating, though they still have some physical practice, but they may not label it as such. And I think that's huge. So with going out to the woods, I mean, that's quite a big commitment to physically go out for that. It reminds me as well of the quote from Dalai Lama of if you should sit for half an hour a day, or if you don't have time, you should sit for an hour. Totally absolutely true, because whenever you get into that rabbit hole of like, oh, I'm too busy, I haven't got time, I'm going to sack that off, and it's so insidious, because the next day you're still fine if you're coasting off some momentum from previous practice, and the next day you're still fine, and then a week later it's just crept up on you, and then you're on autopilot, and then it's like, oh man, like very hard to like pull the handbrake and get yourself out.
Oh, sorry.
There you are. You're back.
So I'd say with meditation, for instance, it's very much, it's like just being at peace. You know what I mean? And I think it's very true. When you feel that you don't have time for it, that's when you need to do it the most. It's like I like the saying that a boat only sinks when water gets in. You know what I mean? So you can't control the tide. You can't control the ocean. The only thing that you can control is yourself. Maintaining that. So if you are the boat, you're just keeping the hull and maintaining the decks and everything, making sure that you are solid. And not obviously figuratively speaking. And that way, you will go where you will go. Because often we have to do things that we don't want to do. We've got to do them regardless of how we feel about it. Might as well be calm about it. Might as well be positive about it. And I'll be honest. Sometimes if I'm slapped with a whole load of work, I'm like, oh no. But this is not the person I want doing this task. So what I'll do is I'll give myself a bit of time out. Okay. Now I'm ready to do it.
This is not the person I want doing this task.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting point.
Because if you can handle yourself, you will always have an impact over the outcome of the situation. Always, always, always. And I think I would rather handle a situation calmly than if I was stressed. You know what I
can
mean?
see the carryover from there to martial arts now as well.
Absolutely,
It's a very
absolutely.
clear bridge.
Yeah.
And I think and the same applies at least to the sports that I've competed in, powerlifting and gymnastics. Although they're not fighting sports, they very much, if you're too amped, if you're too nervous or any of that, you end up just losing the precision. And
Yeah.
even for something like powerlifting, where you'd think it's just raw aggression and just deadlift the bar and but actually, if you have one too many caffeine pills or you sniff the nose talk a bit too hard, then you lose your line and you blow a disc or whatever. So I think there's definitely a level of calm that is needed to maintain that precision and the consciousness of working through the process. John, what are your thoughts on chi?
You know, there is. It's like, personally, it's something. It's very real for me. It's like I know
Probably
some.
define it actually as well for the listeners.
Yeah. No, I know. Oh, that's great. I know some people say, "Oh, it's not a real thing," but you know what? It's like it's very real. It's like if I get you to imagine eating a lemon right now, okay, I'm sure you start tearing up, be like this. You can do that without even eating a real lemon. You know what I mean? Now, if I'm feeling real energy, like this energy, now, whilst people might say it's not physical, it doesn't have to. Well, of course it's not. Is chi a thing? Absolutely, it is. It's like and you can increase it with certain practices and everything. Now, I do know that there are people who can take their chi energy to a very, very high level where you can actually just feel it emanating off them when you stood next to them, which is amazing, Or either that, or they're just exceptionally warm people. But it's absolutely, and it's something that you can feel inside you. It's it's like a feeling that you get from someone. It's like a sixth sense, or almost, when you can feel it from someone else. You know what I mean?
Is that something you cultivate deliberately yourself?
Well, I'd say because I meditate a lot. I try to be as clear as I can. What happens is it makes me very open to everything else. You know what I mean? It keeps my eyes about me. And I like to think I'm very perceptive, and but that's because this is clear. When this is clear, you are able to see much more.
Okay, and so the energy you're talking about it very much as if it's saying that if there is a subjective sense there, then that will impact your performance. But you then made the jump to say kind of you got someone who has a very well cultivated one, and you can even feel it off them.
Mm.
In your mind, is it something that is it a way to harness your own performance, or is it something that is actually a measurable measurable physical thing if we found the tools to measure it? So is it a way to help you to recruit muscles in a certain way and improve the way that you act, or do you think it's something beyond that?
Well, it's alignment. It's all about synchronizing and synergy. Synergy is just synchronized energy. You know what I mean? So it's where your thoughts are in conjunction with where your body is, and where your attention goes is where energy flows, essentially. So if you're everywhere, it's like you'll get all kinds of you get all kinds of vibes off me. But it's like I'd say it's all about synergy, synchronized energy. You want to make sure that whatever you do is in alignment. So I get a lot of people, for instance, who they have a long-term goal, but they miss out on that long-term goal with what they want to do now at this very point in time. It's like, I want to lose weight, but I also really want to eat this pizza right now. So, that all of that needs to be aligned. All of that and once that's aligned, then you can start. Then you can start having more of this. You can feel the energy. Once this and this are all aligned together, you will be able to achieve a lot more, and actually feel a lot better. You actually feel the difference when both of these are together, because often this is way ahead of this,
100%. And you certainly feel different in yourself when it is all aligned. And I think if anyone listening has spoken or sat and had a chat with someone who is 100% present, it's usually someone who's like, if you ever meet a monk or a holy man or something, and it's intoxicating. It's like you're sat with them and you almost feel like you've just been silenced inside, and it's such an unusual feeling. And I think there has got to be something beyond that. And a guy called Gary Weber, who I've been trying to get on the podcast, but he keeps refusing because he says he doesn't do podcasts. He's a guy who had a spontaneous awakening after doing 4 or 5 hours of spiritual practice every morning. And he said that basically one day he was in the middle of a yoga pose and his thoughts just stopped, and that was it. They never returned. And he said he went into work that morning and he had to deliver a meeting. And there was the sense of like, well, I'm going to get found out. Like, there's nothing, that my thoughts have stopped. Like, and he said he delivered the most articulate, well thought out meeting, and everyone thinks that you're the smartest person in the room because you're the only person in the room. You're the only person who's actually all there. And so maybe it is just that. And as you said, there's an alignment of your breathing patterns, your body language, and all of that stuff, such that you are fully with someone and they feel that resonance, and then they relax.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree. Oh my goodness, my battery's at 4%.
Okay, we'll wrap up soon.
Oh no, I just got a notification. No, absolutely, and I think having that. Just so if I cut off, you know why. Yeah, but I'd say absolutely. So I mean, if you have that, please send it to me. I'd love to. It was a video. Was it a?
Yeah, I'll send you the interview with him. He's a fascinating guy. His book is well worth reading as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah, he's an advocate of a lot of the self-inquiry track of meditation, along with some pranayama and yoga practices as well.
Fantastic. Bless you.
Thank you. Cool. So, Jon, it's been fantastic talking to you. And I think, given the 4% battery, we better start to wrap things up. But have you got any final thoughts for the listeners? Anything you think that they should explore? Any habits they should develop, or any advice that you have?
Well, I'd say, life is a collection of experiences. It's what you do with it that makes it worth living, but it's also who you spend it with. So, I'd say, your vibe attracts your tribe. It's I think that's a bit of a cliche, but I'd say, there is enough in this world. The world is big enough for you all to have what you want, for you all to have the success that you want to work towards. So, dream big and plan. I think there's more than enough out there for us.
What a beautiful, beautiful message. Thank you very much, Jon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. How can we find out more about you?
So you can go to my website. It's XUE-ZHANG. I'll send you a link. And
cool. Stick it in the show notes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And it's lovely.
YouTube, all of that stuff too.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll do that.
Lovely.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. You
Jon,
take care.
Pleasure. Speak soon.
Speak to you soon. Take care.